Okay, everyone, welcome to the developer Ask Me Anything. We have Blender developers here lined up. We're going to start with asking every developer shortly to say the name and what they do or did for Blender. And then I and Plasma Solutions, or Thomas Beck, we will look at other sides and we are going to give people microphones. And you can have any question you want, but it has to be something related to software development. Okay? Let's start.
Hi, I am Simran. I work for the Blender Institute, and I'm the coordinator for the animation module working on Alembic and USD.
Hi, I'm Aaron, and I work mostly on documentation and fix small annoyances inside Blender.
My name is William Rainish, and I work as a user interface designer.
Hello, I'm Julien Durour. I'm currently the main developer of GLTF, import and export.
Hi, I'm Mike. I did a lot of the OpenGL upgrade for 2.8, and now I'm independently working on game development tools for Blender.
I'm Pablo. I'm a character artist, and I design and code the skull mode tools.
I'm Jeroen. I'm a coordinator of sculpting, vertex painting, and a lot of stuff, and I do a lot of drawing code.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Parborg, and I'm more of a jack-of-all-trades guy. I do a bit of everything, I feel. But right now, it's mostly animation system or stuff like that.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm currently working on the new node-based particle system.
The fans.
I'm Julian, also working at the Institute. I'm doing UI development, like workspaces and file browser and VR and everything, and UR.
I am Stefan, and I'm mostly working on cycles.
I'm Bastien. I'm mostly working on data management, or library override, asset management, all that kind of stuff.
I'm Ines. This year I focused mostly on documentation, on the development portal, and also a bit on the user manual.
Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm mostly working on cycles, but currently also finishing UDEM.
Hi, I'm Howard. I work on modeling tools, mostly Bevel, but also Boolean, which will be released very soon, new Boolean.
Hi, I'm Monique. Past year I've done, I think, most of my time bug fixing, patching, and Blender education.
Hi, my name is Sebastian, and I'm working on fluid simulations.
Hi, my name is Hans. I've been working on Bevel recently.
Hi, I'm Dala. I'm working as one of the development coordinators with Nathan Lettery. Big show of hands for the team here.
Okay, let me show hands if you have questions. Who has a question? Over there.
Hi, David Gilson from the UK. I think my question is probably for Jacques. Big animation nodes fan. Any idea when modifiers will become nodes instead of just things in a sidebar?
So a couple of months ago, we had to decide whether we want to do particles or procedural modeling first. And in the end, we decided to do particles first because we really want to get rid of the old particle system and get rid of the code and have something better. The plan is to go into procedural modeling and modifier nodes after the particle system rewrite.
More questions. Questions.
So I have a question about Alembic. Is there, what's kind of the timeline on, say, bringing in animated camera data, or I guess just generally non-mesh data?
I am currently thinking about a new layer inside the animation system, because right now there is a patch available by Kevin Dietrich that loads some camera parameters, but it requires some nasty jumps through hoops that I'd rather avoid. So I can't really give you a timeline because it's all very much design phase yet. But we have I have some ideas to put it in the animation layer in the same as you have keyframes and drivers, and then you would also get loading stuff from cache.
Thank you, Sibran. I have a question over there. The guy from the first row. I can go there. Oh, there's...
Right there, yeah. User interface question. Currently, it's a little awkward to work on multiple windows in Blender on multiple monitors because you have to click twice to give focus and then start working. I don't know if that's something that would be easy to modify, or and I don't know who to ask that question to, but that's kind of my question.
All right. It's Julian or William? That's the question I have. I guess Julian. There's so many this year.
Okay, if we go to fabricate.developer.blender.org right now, there's a task for this in the user interface project, and it's a high priority task, so it's actually something that we really want to get fixed finally. But it is a bit of a hassle. I had to do quite some stuff there for the file browser, and you really need to dig into the low-level operating system dependent stuff. So yeah, it is a big hassle, and we probably need to do some trickery and do stuff that the operating system APIs aren't written to do. But yeah, it's a high priority thing, and we want to get it done as soon as possible.
Hello, I have a question on the particle system, and I wonder if you have if you are planning to do a level of detail system for the particles. Because, for example, when you have vegetation, I would like that automatically what's far get some maybe also some different mesh or from different level of subdivision.
To me, it seems like this is not particle system specific, but more like instancing specific question. So it should be part of some instancing system. And I don't see any real reason why we can't have it, just not my priority currently. So.
This is also something that the library override system can help with when you start having different instances and having overrides on them. Bastian, do you want to?
Yeah, you could have different revisions, for example, or variants of an same assets with different level of details. So you can just switch between them in from the outliner, for example, and it would apply to all scene or automatically.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say a big thank you for all your hard work. I admire you. Huge respect for that. And now the question. We have something like cyclist camera visibility checkbox, and I would like to ask if we would have something like that in Eevee also.
Jeroen, you're the draw manager resident developer. Well, if it is possible, we will have it. We do have Eevee as its own standalone engine, but one of their goals is to be totally compatible with the Cycles workflow. Why you don't have it? I don't know. I think it should be possible. But Clément is the lead developer on that. And then he's not here, but then Lucas is going to fill in for him.
I have to say that I'm not an expert on this, so I might be wrong in this, but my assumption would be that due to how Eevee works, it's hard to implement overrides because, for example, a reflection, everything is done in screen space. So if you don't want to reflect the objects that's on the screen, you can't reflect anything because you don't know what's behind it in a rasterization pipeline. So I would assume that the only thing you could do is hide it completely or not, and we already have viewport visibility for that.
I see, thank you.
Of course, with light probes, you can get a lot of these done with only a collection affecting the reflection. So you gotta have to find your way around that.
It's a question for the interface. Is the 101 project something that we can expect in the future?
Tom, do you wanna answer this one?
It's a secret project. We don't talk about it. But no, I mean, you know me. I like to dream futures and plans, and to say, well, we have to make Blender so much more awesome because it's still not good enough. And the 101 project is about having a 2.8 compatible startup file, a template, which would be more easy for teachers to put in high school or so. And it could be a UI with only some monkeys and some textures, and you drop them in the 3D viewport. And it's a proof of concept to show to trainers and teachers that they can use Blender to configure environments in which they can teach people something. But to do that, I think the code is almost finished for it, but we still need people on board to set it up as a project without adding more burden to them. So I've been put a little bit in the back on this, like guys, Ton, it's nice if you do this, but not with them, right? So it's a bit, I'm waiting for the right moment to put it back. Yep.
The other part, if I may answer as well, the other part of the answer is that the 101 project as like a separate thing is a lot less necessary with a lot of development that has happened and will happen. So you have things like the toolbar and active tools that makes it easier to use Blender more visually. You don't need to know about all the hotkeys. Another thing that will enable usage of Blender that is a lot more sort of immediate and intuitive is the asset manager. So you could sort of drag things together, drag in materials, that kind of thing. So there are lots of developments.
But the asset manager is planned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that will should greatly help as just a basic built-in feature. And now we have things like left-click select by default. So you see Blender moving in that direction, becoming more powerful and easier to use over time.
Okay.
Julian wants to add something very brief about that.
Yeah, really brief. Like one of the things that I'm always being told when I talk to teachers or to some teachers, they say that people, or the idea that kids always struggle to use Blender and want a really simple Blender is sometimes not really true. It seems like it's more the teachers that struggle with a complex Blender than kids actually. And so I rather spend time improving Blender as a whole than focusing on simplifying things for the specific thing. Yeah.
It's still the 101, something that we still see as a project. For 3D printing, for example, you might want a subset of Blender, and you're gonna get it. Next.
Hi, I have a question on the new particle system. Right now we have like a start and end emission process. Does it will convert it in a rate process because it can be really practical for us?
What? Oh, yeah, I want to get Mantaflow to talk as well.
So I think the question was if we can have, instead of a start and end frame for the emission, just a rate that you can keyframe things.
Yes, totally.
If you go on the builder.blender.org and then go to the experimental branch and test the functions branch, which is where the current state of the particle system is in, you will see that, in fact, the mesh emitter already has this functionality right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
First, a question to everybody. Who experienced having the viewport in 2.8 slower than in 2.7?
Not many, but it's valid.
It's same with me. So, is there a good reason therefore? Is this something that's being worked on? Because
yes, there's a reason for it.
Okay.
I hear it's my fault, so I take all the blame, but well, yeah, we first went to a new OpenGL level version, what also add a lot of burden into how to get the GPUs ready and get the GPUs drawing correct. We all know about it, and all the developers are working on it to improve the system. And we have some ideas to improve it, but it's a long run to get it all in there. So we know about it.
Maybe Mike wants to add something about it as well. Mike did one of the early engineering for the new drawing API.
Yeah. Well, if you're blaming the new thing on the new OpenGL, then that is my fault, and I'm sorry. But as far as why it's slow, I mean, one of the things was that I noticed was slow to resize windows and things like that, and that's about reallocation of buffers because we're drawing into buffers instead of drawing directly to the screen. And so that's a thing. But in normal usage, you don't have to do that. And what makes it slow is that, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I can think of one specific thing that could be improved, and I might pitch in, but it's like, yeah.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? Because are you sure you don't mean that transforming things in edit mode is slow? Is that could be what you mean as well? Because that's a little bit not so much viewport related, but
because it has to rebuild it behind the scenes.
Throughout the 2.80, we try to. The main goal was to have a playback animation as fast as we can, even if we had to sacrifice performance elsewhere. So it really depends on where we're facing it. I'm not surprised it might happen. It's way more workload to the shader, to the graphic card with 2.80, but we're expecting production computers to be decent results. People working in the studio seem to be fine. But we're going to get improved, I hope.
Not asking for more complexities, but is there any perspective for programmable OpenGL shaders?
The programmable OpenGL, the one that's only, I think it's not compatible with Mac, right?
No, it's just that you can create your own shader code in Eevee.
Right. Another first one to ask this in the conference. It's about how can I have my own material in Eevee made by myself. Does anyone want to comment on this? Jeroen, maybe? Basically, maybe I can add a little bit that throughout the Eevee at 2.80, we changed the whole underline drawing API and draw code. We did a new API to help anyone drawing with the add-ons. We had a draft in the beginning to have a whole engine that could be 100% OpenGL, or to allow for something like LuxRender or Arnold, whatever external engine you plug into Blender, to have its own custom GLS drawing. Never went out of the paper. We still haven't seen the need from the other engines that would help maintaining this, so that's maybe one of the reasons we didn't pursue it further. But maybe you can help.
Oh, hi. Hi, I had a question about Blender interactive mode and what the timeline was on when it'll be released, and if there would be future plans for support with web deployment.
Don, do you want to answer that one? Don, do you want to answer about the one about the Blender Interactive? Basically, we tried to, or we had a design for how to replace what once was the Blender game engine with a whole interaction in the UI. And if you think about the tool project with everything has a gizmo, the VR project, which we're working on, which everything is, we are inside the viewport to work on, was a move in that direction. However, to really wrap it, to really have it as interactive mode, we didn't get the developer to do it. We had someone that maybe would be able to do it. He didn't have the time, and we kind of had to prioritize everything else, which is a lot. So sorry, but there's no timeline on that. Sorry. I think there was someone here. No. Oh. I think he was here first. Well, after
Hello.
do you.
Hi, I have a question about the new bevel modifier. I saw a presentation, by the way, great, thank you for your work. You were using the UI graph to create a new profile to use on a bevel. Have you considered using a Bezier curve instead, a 3D curve? Because that's easier to control and it might be easier to save profiles to use later.
So for some background, the question was about the custom bevel profiles, which should be coming in 282. Yeah, so I would like to add the, sharing the curve with a Bezier curve object in the viewport, actually. So I'd like to work on that at some point, and it should be fairly doable. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's also a chance for people to ask about the code, the development, how does my patch get into the Blender? People have been asking those, so it's not only about the users. Someone else haven't had a question here. But I think he was here first. Sorry, get in line.
First off, the Eevee viewport has been incredible and revolutionized my workflow. But along those lines, I've noticed that when I try to render out the Eevee viewport, it's significantly slower, even if I'm just rendering out, as if in the OpenGL viewport in 2.7.9, when I'm just trying to render out the viewport settings. Equivalently, I get significantly slower render times, and if I'm trying to render out a significant portion of, like a significant frame count, I can preview it at 60 frames per second in the viewport, but then when I render it out, it's something like 5 frames per second at a render speed. Are there any plans to improve that, or is there something that I'm doing wrong?
I will first answer the question, what happens, why is it slower? And basically when you do it in the viewport, it's rendered by the GPU and it's displayed directly on the graphical card, so that's fast. And if you're doing a playback in the viewport, it only calculates a single sample. So when you render to an image, a lot of other stuff will happen. It renders 64 samples, so but that's not the main case. What happens next is that the GPU image is copied back to the CPU, and on modern graphical cards, that's a really slow process. You can only do it 20 times per second. That's the main burden of that. Why do we do it? Why do we copy it back to the CPU? That's for the color management. That's for the sequencer. That's for the compositor. And basically, that's the slowdown. The copying back from the GPU to the CPU.
Texture painting.
Oh, please get up.
Texture painting. What would be really cool is to be able to paint to textures that are not the active color map and see the rendered view. Say if you've got a black and white map for switching between two textures, to paint on a black and white, but see the mix between your textures, materials.
Look at that. Our first feature request is sneaked in as a question. Do you want to answer something around that? The plans for texture painting, Pablo?
Currently, texture paint has an insane amount of issues related, like starting from the brush engine, how it's designed. So I want to think of or make a new design on how textures will work and how we are going to tag textures with channels to paint PBR materials and to have multi-layer painting. And obviously that is going to come with that. But we need to get the basic stuff right first, like the brush engine, like rotating the 2D view. So I think we should start getting that right first before doing advanced cool stuff.
What you're asking about, which is, could you see the final result while you paint in the viewport? And you can already do that if you. Yeah.
Yeah. Blender already has a separation between the active painting channel and whatever you're seeing. You can just see in the Eevee, then everything's composed, and you can just be painting on the blend channel. But as Pablo said, Udin, multi-layer texture painting. There's so many things we want to add, but they have to be done properly. So luckily we have people here to do it.
Hello. I would like to ask about the recent AMD sponsorship. And there was mentioned Vulkan API integration into Blender. What does it mean more generally, and would it bring GPU rendering in cycles on Mac? Thanks.
Okay. So what does it mean now that we are gonna have more incentive to have Vulkan in Blender?
Not a lot of improvement. It's about the OpenGL is not being developed anymore for a long time. So we need to go to a newer version and or newer render API, and that's Vulkan. Basically, the step of Blender 2.8 was first to get up to a level, OpenGL 3.3, so it's easier to switch to another render engine. And Vulkan is our choice, so we will go that way. But it's not an easy task. It's Vulkan is really optimized for gaming and for distributing gamings. and applications or 3D software application, it's quite hard to get that fit into Vulkan. But I know that Clément has a plan for it, how to execute it. It's really up finding time and to do that. And afterwards, a lot of stuff will become available to Eevee, to whatever.
We just don't. There's a chance that there's not going to be great performance improvements. Although Vulkan is praised as it is, and it's fantastic because the architecture we're pursuing is not really thought to work in tiles and this kind of optimization without huge revamp, which won't do. Get up.
Yeah, I would like to know about the undo system because it seems really slow.
Hello, Bastian. Comment ça va? Well, exactly, it's not his fault. He's just helping here. There's a branch, right?
There is a branch for the asset engine system, yes, and like we have plans to get it the first initial version in 282 or 283. Why is it slow? Because I've been working on a lot of other things. But wait.
Why is undo is low in 2.8 and 2.79? And part of this is that we're now having copyright on everything, and then Bastian's gonna elaborate.
Yeah, the main issue is that after each undo step, we have to rebuild the whole depth graph. So you have to reevaluate all your modifiers, a lot of things. So that's what is making undo slow currently. And globally, the plan is to undo less, if I can say that. So that we will only undo things that changed and try to keep the whole data of things that didn't change in an undo step, including the old evaluated data, so that you don't have to rebuild it. So ideally, we should gain a lot of speed, especially on complex scenes with that system. And that is planned for 82.
And that should give 2.8 in pair with 2.79. And then from there on, it can maybe keep improving, can cache the modifier stack all the way to the last one for the active object. So we're tweaking something that's really got a quick iteration.
Hello, is there a roadmap or at least hope to drop the old internal texture for modifiers and be able to use texture nodes for displace modifier, for example?
Tough one. Jack, maybe? Oh. We removed most of the Blender internal textures and kept only in a few places. And
so there isn't really a schedule for texture nodes currently. Like we definitely do plan to implement texture nodes, and when you have texture nodes, it should be easy to use them in modifiers. If we probably we won't even have modifiers at that point anymore. So. But yeah, it's just
you're gonna have nodes.
Right, because you have nodes. So yeah, when you have texture nodes, we can use them for procedural modeling and everything. I don't see why not. It just takes time.
Maybe for cycles, why cycles doesn't have its own texture nodes? Let's say Stefan.
Is anything from cycles preventing it from having more texture nodes support? As in texture nodes, as in like more procedural textures, more various procedural textures. Well, to a certain degree, is the more code we add to cycles. Traditionally, we always had a problem. If we made cycles more and more complex, it would get harder to get it to run on GPUs. Sometimes it would actually fail to run at all on certain GPUs, or it just would get progressively slower the more code and more complex we made cycles. If you're leaving GPUs aside, you can go crazy with anything you want with open shading language. And maybe one of the long-term goals could actually be using open shading language as well on the GPU as well. And then you can actually create your own shader nodes and go crazy with any texture, any way that you like. That would, in my opinion, be an ideal future. There's parts of open shading language that are already working with CUDA. I am not aware of anyone that has public support for OpenCL. We'll see. I mean, it would be really cool to have that. I don't think there's anyone actively working right now on really adding like a very complex system. I mean, we've had a few new procedurals being added recently. It's just a judgment you have to make. Like, is adding that extra code, extra complexity, extra maintenance to an already complex engine worth the effort? Or are we like adding one feature and blocking all the users from getting more speed?
That's for my curiosity. The 2.7.9 and all the texture nodes are still on 2.8.
Oh, we got rid of
but
some of
only
them,
for
but you haven't-
brushes and things, or
They are unusable, says Bastian.
Yeah.
It's there, but it's kind of in a dormant state.
Yeah. Good.
So,
there was one.
Yeah, I was just wondering about motion blur in Eevee. How's it going with that? And yeah.
There's we do have the camera motion blur, and we have a task that we will get object motion blur. It's just one of the many tasks that still needs to be done.
Hi, I'm a big fan of the adaptive subdivision and micro displacement. Is there any plans to develop that further and maybe have support for Eevee?
Oh, for Eevee.
It's open subdiv, right?
well, we said micro displacement, micro surfacing, right? Does anyone know for the cycles? Be that Stefan or Lucas? Give us your opinion on the matter.
Well, I think there is still some work going on with the micro displacement and cycles, but I'm not really up to date on it right now. And as for Eevee, I don't see a technical reason why it would not work, but as I said before, I'm not an expert in Eevee at all, so there might be something that prevents it, but I think it might work, maybe.
Those more advanced programming shaders could even work on Eevee, but then whenever you switch to Vulkan and to Metal, if you want to support an Apple, might be an issue. That's what Jeroen was going to say, so there you go. Next. I hear someone asking about Udine. Lucas, I'll get to you, sorry. When is Udine going to happen in Blender?
That depends on how, do we want the full feature set right now, or is it, because right now, most things are working. The only thing that's still blocking it is the Workbench engine, which is kind of important for texture painting, so we would probably want support for that. I'll probably need help from Jeroen, anyone who knows more about that. And apart from that, it's mostly a case of just review and organizing things and making sure there are no bugs left, because most of the code has been just sitting around for a year and things have changed. And yeah, just some polishing and Workbench and review.
Now for the real question.
Okay. So I was trying to modify a stroke in the sculpt mode via API, Python API, and I got a error saying incorrect context, which I was told that's the wrong mouse input. So what I'm wondering is it possible to program through the API a stroke for the sculpt mode through just programmatically doing that, and possibly recording and playing back sculpts?
I mean, there are several levels in that question. On the generic level of the API, the Python API, operators in Blender are expected to run with a certain set of data which are featured by a context. When you are running that operator from the command line or from a script, you often don't have the same context that the one is expected. So you have to fill it yourself, generate a context yourself with the data that is required. So that's the technical part. For the sculpting thing, I will let one of the sculpting guys answer. But in general, you have you can define curves in the API already for painting. I should be able to do it for sculpting too.
I have a prototype somehow working more or less for storing the strokes and repeating them in history, if that is what you're trying to do. but it only works on sculpt mode. So I need to do something similar for texture paint if we want to keep compatibility in all modes. See, if we can have only for sculpt mode, I can make the patch. It's fine.
We do have something similar for the MPX project. They're doing via Python add-on a way to control the strokes for sculpting and grease pencil via Python. So it's I think you got some answers here.
Yeah, hello. I'm fairly new to Blender. I used 3ds Max for 20 years just to make the switch. But one of the first things I was looking for is a material library, like a built-in material library. Is that something that's in the pipeline?
We do call it differently. We call asset manager. What's the timeline for asset manager, Bastien?
Well, asset management itself is for 82 or 83, the first basic release of it, and then we will, of course, keep building on it. And for the material library, there's also the cloud on blender.org, which features a set of easy-to-use shaders already.
And of course, we have the Blender Cloud add-on, which allows you to use some of the assets that are in the Blender Cloud directly into Blender. And there's a few independent projects. We had the Blender Kit presenting something last night and all that. So asset manager, those are going to be the main projects that's going to take care of that.
Hi, I'm a hard surface modeler, and I heard during the introductions that there's a new Boolean system in the works. So just could you tell us about that? What's going to come from it? How will it improve modeling workflow?
A new Boolean system from scratch.
Yeah, so a lot of people complained when Cork was taken away. It was taken away because there was nobody who really wanted to maintain it. It wasn't maintained at source. So I've been writing Boolean from scratch. I'm getting close. The main things I'm addressing are you can have coplanar intersections. It uses doubles inside instead of floats, so some of the precision errors will probably go away. And you probably won't have to have completely closed things to intersect. It'll be allowed to have a little bit of leak there.
Just speak closer. It's going to be fantastic. It's already fantastic. When do we have it in Blender?
In a month or two.
I have a question. For the audience, who is still using 2.79? Aha, wow. Now I want to know, what is it that we have to do to make you move to 2.8?
No, for me, I just need my time, but I'm moving soon now.
Yeah. Okay, who else? Is there something we really have to do to get 2.8 working for you?
I mean, for rendering in Eevee, I have to use screen capture for like rendering a viewport render, where I could do the OpenGL in the last one. And if I'm sending to like a server farm, then I can't just open up a screen capture and screen capture the viewport.
Well,
is that for offline rendering or?
Offline, yeah. What do you mean by screen capture?
My previous question was about how like I can view render at 60 frames per second. But then when I'm actually rendering it out to my files, it's about 5 frames per second.
Okay.
But if I open up a screen capture, I can quote unquote render at 60 frames per second. But I could have done that in 2.79 at 60 frames per second or faster even. So.
But you mean it's the playback speed of the viewport for things? Okay, so we have to make Blender much faster.
No, it's only for offline rendering. It's only for offline rendering. There are a few people that have similar problem because it could render very fast with the Blender internal, but for Eevee, they don't know how to use a render farm with GPU, and that's part of the problem. But some people are fixing that already.
More 279 features, okay? Yeah. What? The compositor. The compositor, it works fine.
Is the compositor not working as we had in 2.79? Real, it's not rhetoric.
I mean, 2009 and 2.8, the compositor are the same, basically. Oh. We come back to that at the end, okay? We come back to that. Who else has 279 things that we have to fix in 280?
Over there? Can you just scream and we repeat?
Thank you. We passed the project from 279 to 2.8, and we have a very lack of performance when we had a lot of modifiers like array or subsurface, and it was very complicated because we can't finish the project because of that. We dropped to 24 frames per second to 5 frames per second it was really, really hard.
So you meant arrays and particles, that's what you said?
No, arrays and subsurface modifiers.
A subsurface object. Does anyone want to? Well, yeah, okay, well, we have the open subdiv in 2.80, but only the CPU one. So that's one of the problems people are noticing, like it's slower now than it had. Yeah, because now it's CPU, used to be GPU. We hope that Sergey is gonna work on that. Oh, hold on.
So one of the reasons that the open subdivision is slower than the previous method is that the previous method we had in 2.79 before we deprecated and removed it did a lot of like shortcuts in the subdivision method. So, and for a lot of people that was a problem because it produced low quality results. And because we didn't want to maintain it ourselves, we moved to open subdiv that computes very high quality subdivision surfaces. And the issue with that is because it's high quality, it takes longer time to compute. And especially if you have vertices that don't have 4 edges. So if you have something with 3 edges, 5 edges or more, it becomes a lot slower because it has to do specific tricks to figure out how the mathematical surface for the subdivision surface will look. Sergey has looked into this quite a bit, and it's a hard nut to crack because a lot of the optimizations we thought we could do wasn't possible. So now we're kind of stuck between not really knowing if we can speed up the open subdivision on the CPU anymore. We're still looking into the GPU stuff, but we're not sure either because it seems like it's quite a common problem with open subdiv in itself that it's not really built for, or maybe it's built for, but at least in our cases, it's slow when you edit the meshes. If you just have a static mesh, pull it through, it caches the result, then it's fast because it doesn't have to do these computations again and again and again. But in Blender, because it's a generative system, it's slow because then it has to recalculate all those stuff every time for the mesh.
Am I allowed to add a quick question? I mean, oh, okay. About OpenSubdiv and why it's not on GPU, because like if topology changes and things like that, then you have to recalculate all these things. But just once you have things set up and you're animating, I mean, that's what it's exactly designed to do. So like, what's the holdup?
Well, for the array modifier, it generates geometry. So it's if you have the topology is the same, it doesn't change per frame, then it's fast. But as soon as you have something generative like Boolean modifiers or something else that changes the topology of the mesh, okay, so you're like animating the thing underneath and then adding modifiers and then that? Yeah.
So in 2.80 we removed 2 big things like Blender internal. Who's missing Blender internal rendering? Oh, still a couple of people. I heard one person who told me that they use offline rendering or servers, and Blender internal is fantastic for that. But we'll be working on it. The game engine, come on, the game engine. Wow, how many? A little bit. That's not very enthusiastic, right? So this is not a super high priority. But how is interaction mode coming in general?
Well, yeah, they ask, right? We're doing the beats that can allow us to create the whole thing, a design interactive mode. We answered that question already. It's all good, it's all good. No, it's a 2.7, otherwise I have a real question here. Anything more 2.7 stuff?
Yep. I'm still using 2.79 for smoke simulations because subframe interpolation in 2.8 is broken on smoke sims.
Smoke simulation, Sebas.
Yeah, I've seen that it's broken in 2.7 or it works in 2.79 and it doesn't in 2.8, but I didn't see a point in putting too much effort into fixing it because the new system is coming out in 2.82. So you just have to wait a bit for the next version.
Thank you, Sean.
So we are still not.
Get up.
Get up, stand up. We are still not using 2.8 because in our company the whole pipeline relied on the GLSL shaders of 2.7. And Dalai, you know the problem. I talked with you about it. I just wanted to mention it, and I'm happy that you're already kind of.
Yes, they were working with node materials, and they would export the node materials and use this in their engine. But with Eevee, there's only a hacky way of doing it, so that's on the works. I think there's a question here.
No.
Next year, you're the next after we're done with 2.7 to 2.80.
What person? What?
Yeah, it's not about the 2.7, but there's still 2.7 people there.
Yeah.
One of us. No, I don't use it.
And I'm not completely sure. Sorry. I'm not completely sure, but I think that you cannot OpenGL render the sequencer. Is that right?
You can.
You can?
You're wrong.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can. So I can render
Maybe
Grease Pencil.
Grease Pencil specific, maybe.
Yeah, the annotation, because now it's annotation in the sequencer. Because I did some tutorials or thing, and I used Grease Pencil to mark things.
But now you mean 2.80 or?
I don't know. 80 is the future for me. So 81 is like, wow.
Well, we are working on the sequencer. We're seeing a few talks about that. The Grease Pencil team is particularly keen, and Daniel should be here, by the way, Daniel Lara, particularly keen on having the editor-centric pipeline. We saw that from Tangent as well, doing Grease Pencil. So even if it's not working, we're going to get there. I can't see.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the asset manager. How would the asset manager...
If it's not 2.7, we have a line here. Anything else more 2.7? Anyone else still hanging to it? We had the whole presentation about the blending game engine. It was fantastic, Faro 3D. So good luck with that, buddy.
Honestly, okay. I have a question for a thing that was in 2.7 already and is still in 2.8, and that is a little bit for Python development. And it is especially for the console. I think that has been going on for quite a while. That is that you have to toggle the console window to get the actual output from the print commands, for example. And on Windows, that works quite fine because you have that toggle console command. On Linux, for example, you actually have to make like a shortcut to start Blender via the command line so you can actually see the output. Is there maybe any way whatsoever to get the console output visible inside the Blender window without having to toggle all of that?
And that's feature requests. Look at them, feature requests coming, like they're nothing. Does anyone want to comment on that? But that's not preventing you from using 2.80, so you're sneaky bastard.
I mean, we don't have any concrete planning for that or so, but what we plan is having the info editor revamps, or we can put all kinds of information actually in there, like detailed statistics and error logs and notification logs and everything. And we could sort of redirect standard out to that and have the prints in there. I guess that could sort of work. But yeah, we don't have any concrete planning for that.
I think William said before, just the edit mode is really slow if you have a lot of modifiers on your thing, which makes me go back to 2.79 if I have a lot sub-D modeling to do, because I need to see what's going to be my surface. But it's like really slow. Like I drag a vertex and I wait a half a second to see where it's going, and it's somewhere way beyond where it's supposed to go.
What's the scale of your project in your computer station, sir?
Say again?
How big is the project you work on?
No, not big. Just if you have a lot of, just one file, one sub-D modeling object. Sometimes it's just, I move a vertex, it's really slow, and then it draws, and it's just all over the place. It's somewhere. I think William mentioned it before.
William, I'm gonna put that on you.
Well, I just no, but it's but you're right. That's probably what more people are experiencing as being slow rather than the viewport drawing. I mean, the orbiting the viewport is quite fast, but manipulating vertices is the slow part, which is to do with the depth graph and the new open subdiv thing that was already discussed.
There's still 2.7 topics, okay?
Yeah, 2.7 topic. I get this question every week, so I want to point people to an official answer. Regarding baking, something that people are missing, baking the displacement. It was possible in Blender internal, it's not in 2.8. So what's the official answer?
All right, who likes to talk about baking? We can talk about the baking, the other part, but
I think the official answer right now is there are two tasks for displacement and some other type of baking that used to be possible on developer Blender.org. Both of them are created but have 0 comments, and that generally means it is planned, it will be coming back, it will be added to cycles in the future.
now we're going for the final 2 questions. Very quick.
So in the work that I do, we need we use custom properties on individual objects, and we want to use the same shaders between those. And I'm just wondering if there's any technical limitations to being able to access custom properties in cycle shaders.
There is no technical limitation, it would just need to be implemented. The main concern, as far as I know, there is the user interface, because you would just type it into the attribute node, but there should be some kind of visual feedback on whether what you typed in is actually going to work in the render, so we will probably need to work with some UI experts, like some UI experts sitting over there, maybe. Okay, maybe not. So yeah, that's definitely possible, and it is planned.
You pass it on, and pass it on, pass it on, and it ends with Siebren. Yeah.
What? No, it's over. The topic is answered. Right? Yeah, it's all good.
Okay,
then we're happy.
We're done. We're done with questions. No, we're done. We're on, because we're going to end with a new tradition, which I tried as an experiment last year, and that is the audience will vote for a feature. Woo! I know there's manipulations going on here, but we're going to make it a fair vote. So I want to have like 2, 3, 4 topics where you feel like the Blender Foundation should spend more attention on, for example, by giving a developer a grant to work on that specific area in Blender. So can I hear a suggestion from the audience? Compositor has been noted. It's there. What else?
Just scream, it's easier.
Okay, I was thinking about deep compositing.
Deep compositing.
Deep compositing.
But that's compositing, but deep.
Both. We can.
It's part.
But do the compositing people also want deep compositing? Of course. Okay. Okay. I think other features.
Everything node.
We're working on that. We're working on that.
A native voxel object that's addressable, like that's essentially a wrapper for OpenVDB.
Yeah,
like
OpenVDB.
Having access to.
Yeah.
That's like an add-on. You can code that in one.
No. We have even a task for this.
OpenVDB, that kind of native, support. As a primitive in Blender.
Yes, and we have volume primitive. Bracket had this idea as a way to do it for cycles.
Okay, so this is a good feature then.
It must be fantastic.
So how many people support this?
Oh, you're voting like this.
You're going to get a hard time beating the compositing mafia here. So we need something more popular than compositing. Come on.
NURBS.
NURBS? NURBS? I thought we wanted to remove NURBS. Okay, that's still a NURBS fan. Shout out.
A separate workspace for lightning.
That's also easy.
That's a weekend project for.
Very easy. You can do
weekday.
that.
No one works on the weekend.
Ask one of those guys and they will do it like in a few hours for you.
People there, just scream.
What? I missed it.
Multi-layer texture painting.
Multi-layer texture painting. We don't have that. Duh. Well, what about color management? What about working color management? Boo! Yes.
I see someone there asking for a snapping. No. What? What?
Hair simulation.
Grooming and hair
Grooming
simulation.
And hair, yeah.
We have grooming.
Yeah, no, that has to be. Okay.
What? UV editing of what?
We have UV editing. Say something, otherwise we forget.
Parametric objects.
Parametric objects. Oh wow! But can you summarize that in one line? What it exactly means for you?
So you still have your editing options after you start to modify, say, a cube or a.
Is it more like a real modifier stack? Without
No, it's we know what it is. It's like you have a cube with 6 edges, and then you do everything, and then you change to 4 edges, but not a cube.
It's a really procedural object that no geometry, only procedures. Okay, with booleans and everything. Okay, I think we have enough features now. What?
Don't worry. Unless someone's really desperate and it's like.
Someone's really desperate.
Camera tracking. Ooh.
Oh, sure. But whenever you try to make a Python macro sequence, it doesn't register on what object you click. It would be very cool if that would be added.
No one's going to vote for that. They want cool features.
They want cool features. So if I'm fine, I will remember 5 of them.
Okay.
We're first going to do a poll for every 5. I want to see hands and see how the division is. The parametric objects in Blender. Can I see arms? And you, yeah? Okay. There was a
compositor.
Compositor do last.
Multi-layer.
Multi-layer texture. Multi-layer texture. Editing. Yeah, that's getting popular. Compositing is getting there. But there were 2 more.
It was volumetric was one of them.
Hair editing and grooming. Hair?
Hair and grooming and volumetric.
And volumetrics. And color management. Oh, we have that already. Color management. Attention to color management. Okay. So.
And the Oscar goes to?
The Oscar, I think the compositor feels a bit. What are the top 2 now?
I think it's compositor and multi-layer.
Multi-layer, right? Okay. Now we're going to vote for only those 2. Can I get arms for the multi-layer texture editing? And now the one for compositor. It's like the same.
It's about the same, it's hard.
It's like the same, right? We have to do both? Yes, we have to do both? Okay, we do both. Woo! Thank you, audience. Okay, we have to wrap it up. Big applause for the developers. Woo! Wow. Wow. Yay!
Holy shit, you're tiny. All of a sudden, it's like very apparent.